I've always believed that true power isn't about who shouts the loudest. It's about who stays the quietest in a room full of people who think they've already won. And right now, as I clear away the remnants of Sunday brunch, I can feel Barbara Caldwell watching me, calculating, measuring. The dining room is still alive with conversation. Ethan is rambling about some minor inconvenience at work, and Barbara nods along, but I know her focus is here in the kitchen, where I'm stacking plates. She's been waiting for this moment. I hear her footsteps before I see her, a slow, deliberate approach, softened by the delicate clink of her pearl bracelet against her wrist. Then that voice, sweet as poisoned honey. "Claire, dear." I turn, meeting her perfectly practiced smile, the one that's fooled so many. She takes a step closer, lowering her voice just enough to keep it private. "Let's not drag this out any longer." A pause, a sigh, as if she's doing me a kindness. "You need to leave my son." There it is, the word she's been dying to say since the day Ethan brought me home. I don't react. Not yet. She waits, expecting anger, expecting shock, but I just tilt my head, letting her fill the silence, her lips pressed together before she continues. "Ethan deserves someone who fits into our family, someone who understands our values, our world." Her manicured nails drum against the counter. "You've done well for yourself, Claire, but let's be honest, you come from a different kind of background. No real connections, no proper upbringing." A smile, condescending and brittle. "You tried, dear, but you'll never be one of us." I exhale softly, placing a plate in the sink with a controlled clatter. I feel the shift, the way she leans back slightly, thrown off by my lack of resistance. She expects me to argue, to defend myself, to plead my case. I do none of that. Instead, I smile. A slow, knowing smile that makes her eyes narrow just the slightest bit. Then, without a word, I pick up another plate and turn my back to her. Barbara hates being ignored. For the first time since she walked in here, she isn't the one controlling the conversation. I hear her sharp inhale, the way she hesitates, waiting for me to react. When I don't, she lets out a quiet, frustrated breath and stalks back to the dining room. She thinks she's won. She has no idea. Barbara thinks she's planted a seed. She walked out of my kitchen with her head high, convinced that her words had left cracks in my foundation. What she doesn't realize is that I built the foundation. The house she sneers at for being too modern, I bought it. Every tile, every piece of furniture, every inch of this space is mine. The business she waves off as a little side project, it's the reason she can afford those pearls strangling her neck. And Ethan, my loving, oblivious husband, he's been coasting, floating in the life I created, believing like his mother that I was lucky to be here, that I was the one who needed them. I know better. So I wait. The first sign of Barbara's interference comes that night. Ethan is distant at dinner, pushing his food around like a sullen teenager. I take a sip of wine, watching him. Waiting. Finally, he exhales through his nose and says, "My mom worries about you." I almost laugh. "Oh? She just thinks you don't really get our family." "That may be." He hesitates, looking at me like he's searching for the right words. Barbara's words. "She thinks you're holding me back." There it is. I set my wine glass down gently. And what do you think? Ethan runs a hand through his hair, a nervous tick I've seen 100 times before. I think she just wants what's best for me. Not an answer. Not a denial. I could correct him. I could tell him that without me, he'd be drowning. That the car he drives, the vacations he takes, the very roof over his head, none of it exists without me. But I don't. Because that's what Barbara expects. Instead, I nod as if I'm considering his words, as if I'm the one in doubt. And I watch as he relaxes. Barbara has spent her entire life manipulating people, but she's never played against someone like me. She thinks she's winning. I pick up my wine glass, swirling the deep red liquid slowly before taking another sip. I'll let her keep thinking that, for now. There's a special kind of clarity that comes when someone shows you exactly who they are. I've known this was coming. Felt it in the way Ethan hesitated before kissing me goodnight. In the way he lingered on his phone just a little too long after his mother left. But knowing something is coming doesn't make it any less pathetic when it finally happens. I hear them before I see them. I'm walking down the hallway toward the office when I catch the sound of hushed voices. Barbara's saccharine tone, dripping with manufactured sympathy, Ethan's low, uncertain murmurs. The door is slightly ajar, just enough for me to stop outside unseen. I'm only saying this because I love you. Barbara sighs, the martyr act perfected over decades. Claire doesn't belong in this family, Ethan. She never did. A pause, a hesitation. Then Ethan, quieter than I've ever heard him. Mom? Barbara pounces. Sweetheart, listen to me. I can make this easy for you. If you divorce her, I'll make sure you walk away with everything. My breath stills. There it is. The final card, played with all the confidence of a woman who has never lost a hand. Barbara is offering him an escape plan, a way to rewrite history where he's the victim, where I was just a phase. She genuinely believes this is her masterstroke. She doesn't know she's playing chess with a queen. I step away, letting the shadows swallow me whole. I don't need to hear Ethan's response. His silence says enough. That night, Ethan sits across from me at the dining table, hands clasped like he's delivering some grand sermon. The kitchen light above us casts a dull glow, making the lines on his face look sharper, older. Claire, he starts, voice laced with fake regret. We need to talk. I say nothing, just watch him. He clears his throat, straightens his shoulders. I've been thinking a lot about us, and I just feel like we want different things. He looks at me like he's waiting for me to argue, to fight for him, to make this harder than it needs to be. I just tilt my head. Ethan shifts, uncomfortable. I think it's time to move on. For a second, the silence stretches so thin between us, I swear I can hear his pulse. Then, finally, I speak. If that's what you want. His mouth opens slightly, then closes. That wasn't the reaction he expected. No begging, no tears, no desperate clinging to a marriage he already checked out of. I stand up, smooth out the creases in my dress, and walk past him. I hear him let out a quiet breath of relief. He thinks this was easy. He thinks I accepted this. Ethan assumes I'll be the one leaving, that I'll pack my things, disappear like an unfortunate inconvenience while he takes everything. I do pack a bag that night, but not for me. There's a moment in every game where the opponent realizes they've lost. It doesn't happen all at once. It's a slow unraveling, a gradual, horrifying understanding that the ground beneath them isn't solid, that they've been standing on ice, thin and cracking, and it's too late to turn back. Ethan's moment starts at 7:42 a.m. I know this because I hear the sharp slam of a dresser drawer, then another, then the unmistakable shuffle of frantic movement. He's looking for his wallet, for his phone, for something that will give him control. I stay in bed, stretching lazily as I hear him stomp toward the kitchen. The beep of the coffee machine, the impatient tapping of his fingers on the counter. Then, finally, the quiet click of his laptop. Silence. Then a sharp, frustrated inhale. He tries again and again. I sit up just in time to hear his voice, tight with forced calm. Claire? I step into the hallway, tilting my head. Something wrong? He looks up from his laptop, confusion flickering behind his tired eyes. The bank app isn't working. Keeps saying my login is invalid. I blink, feigning innocence. That's weird. Ethan rubs the back of his neck, laughing awkwardly. Yeah, weird. He reaches for his phone, calling the bank directly. I watch, silent, as he paces the kitchen, his fingers drumming against the marble countertop. And then he stops. His body tenses. I already know what the bank rep is telling him. He isn't on the account. He never was. His voice drops, his words clipped. What do you mean I'm not listed? A pause. His grip tightens around his phone. That's my account. My wife and I share everything. Another pause. His face pales. No, he says, almost to himself. There has to be a mistake. But there is no mistake. He isn't on the account. He isn't on anything. By noon, the illusion shatters completely. The house, mine. The business, mine. The money Barbara swore he'd walk away with never existed. I know the exact moment he figures it out because his footsteps turn erratic. Upstairs, downstairs, opening drawers, slamming them shut again. He's searching for proof that he belongs to something, that he owns something. But all he finds are my documents. My name, my signature, and nothing of his. Barbara's promise was nothing more than a whispered lie. By 2 p.m., Barbara calls. I see her name flash on my screen. The sharp, clipped rings of a woman who has never been ignored in her life. I let it go to voicemail. She calls again and again. By the 5th attempt, she sends a text. What have you done? I smile, setting my phone face down on the counter. She thinks this is the end. She doesn't realize it's only the beginning. Barbara Caldwell has spent her entire life believing her last name is enough to bend the world to her will. She thinks power is about perception, who you know, how loudly you speak, how forcefully you demand. But the thing about power, if it isn't real, if it isn't built on something solid, it crumbles the second you push too hard. Today, she learns that lesson the hard way. Ethan's office sits in a glass-paneled high-rise downtown. I imagine the lobby is pristine. Polished floors, sterile lighting, the kind of place where people walk a little faster to look busier than they actually are. It's also the kind of place that doesn't tolerate scenes. Barbara, of course, never got that memo. She storms in like a queen descending upon her court, dripping in entitlement. Her pearls sit high on her throat, her designer bag slung over her arm like a weapon. She bypasses the receptionist entirely. "I need to speak to someone in charge," she announces, voice carrying through the quiet, professional space. The receptionist, young, unimpressed, probably making just above minimum wage, barely glances up. "Do you have an appointment?" Barbara bristles. "I don't need an appointment." She leans in, lowering her voice as if she's offering some grand revelation. "I'm Ethan Caldwell's mother." Silence. The receptionist blinks, unimpressed. Barbara waits, expecting recognition, expecting the same instant deference she's been given in country clubs and charity luncheons. Nothing. So she pivots, plastering on a saccharine smile. "I need to speak to someone in upper management. It's about my son's career." The receptionist sighs, reaching for the phone. One moment. Barbara steps back, smoothing down her blazer, certain she's about to fix everything. She has no idea she just made it worse. By noon, Ethan is sitting in a conference room, hands folded, stomach tight. His boss, a man who never had much patience for nonsense, levels him with a look. "Your mother caused quite the disruption this morning." Ethan forces out a nervous chuckle. "She's just passionate." His boss doesn't smile. "She marched in here demanding we give you a promotion. Said you deserve more after what your wife put you through." Ethan swallows hard. We were already discussing layoffs." The words land like a slow-motion car crash. "And now we're questioning your judgment, your ability to handle personal and professional boundaries." A pause. "This isn't working out, Ethan." Fired. Just like that. Barbara thought she was securing his future. Instead, she destroyed it. By 3 p.m., my phone starts ringing. I let it. Ethan's name flashes on the screen, again and again, each call rolling into voicemail. Then the texts start. "Ethan. Claire, we need to talk. I screwed up. Please answer." Then, finally, a voicemail. I don't listen to it. Not yet. I let them pile up, one after another, like a graveyard of his own making. Because the thing is, Ethan never called when Barbara was poisoning his mind, never called when he believed I was the problem. But now that he's drowning, now he remembers my number. I turn my phone over, screen down, and sip my coffee. Let him sink. Barbara Caldwell has never lost before. Not really. She's spent her whole life bending reality to fit her narrative, making problems disappear with a few well-placed whispers and a well-manicured hand gripping the right people's shoulders. But today, she has no one left to manipulate. Today, she storms into my world. I hear her before I see her. The sharp click of designer heels on polished floors, the receptionist's startled, stammered protests, then the unmistakable slam of my office door bursting open. Barbara stands there, fury radiating off her in waves, her pearl necklace sitting a little too tight against her throat. She's a woman on the verge of what she doesn't even know. "You little bitch." I glance up from my desk, unimpressed. "Barbara?" She marches forward, hands clenched at her sides. "You think you've won?" I fold my hands in front of me, tilting my head slightly. "Haven't I?" She exhales sharply, nostrils flaring. "You tricked him?" I blink. "Tricked him?" She leans over my desk, voice dropping into something venomous. "Ethan trusted you. He thought you were building a life together, but you—" Her hand shakes as she gestures wildly around my office, as if my success is some sort of crime. "You were always planning this, weren't you?" I sit back, tapping a single, manicured finger against my desk. "Tell me, Barbara, when did I ever lie?" She opens her mouth, then shuts it. I push forward, my voice softer now, just enough to make her listen. "Your son had choices. He chose to believe you over me, and now he has nothing because of it." Barbara reels back like I slapped her. Her lips tremble, but her pride won't let her back down. "He deserves better." A slow, wicked smile spreads across my lips. "You're right." I pause, letting it sink in. He does deserve better. Too bad he'll never find it. She sputters, searching for something, anything, to claw her way back to control. But there's nothing left. She's lost. She just hadn't realized it until now. Her hands tremble at her sides, her breath coming in short bursts. She looks around my office, her perfect little world cracking apart, and for the first time in her life, she has no idea what to do next. I lean back in my chair, watching the moment she finally understands. She never had control. I just let her dig her own grave. Ethan texts me at 3:17 p.m. "Claire, please. Just meet me once." I stare at the message, watching the little dots appear, disappear, then appear again. He's hesitating, second-guessing, trying to find the right words. Finally, another message. "I messed up. No, how are you? No, I'm sorry for what I did to you. Just I messed up." As if his regret changes anything. As if he isn't the reason he lost everything. I lock my phone and set it down. I let him wait. Barbara's collapse happens quietly. Not the grand, dramatic downfall she probably feared, but something slower, more pathetic. Her friends, the women she once gossiped with over champagne brunches, start pulling away. It starts with polite refusals to meet. Then invitations stop coming altogether. Without my money propping her up, her status fades like cheap perfume. The pearls, the country club lunches, the "I'm better than you" smirks, all of it slips through her fingers, one overdraft notice at a time. And Ethan, he drifts. No job, no home, no golden parachute from the mother who swore she could save him. He reaches out again, a call this time. I let it ring. Then, on the third attempt, I pick up. Silence stretches between us, heavy and uncertain. Then softly, "Claire." I close my eyes, letting the moment settle. Ethan, the man who once told me we just want different things, now grasping at something. Anything. To pull himself back into my orbit. I inhale slowly. Exhale even slower. Then finally I speak. "There's nothing left to talk about." And I hang up. They never contact me again. Not Barbara, not Ethan, just silence. And it's the most peaceful sound I've ever heard. 1 year later. The boutique is everything I imagined it could be. The soft hum of conversation floats through the air, blending with the gentle clinking of champagne glasses. The space is warm and elegant, soft lighting, carefully curated displays, a seamless balance of luxury and comfort. Every detail, every inch of it, is mine. People mill around, admiring the pieces, the craftsmanship, the empire I built from the ground up. The same empire Barbara once called a little side project. Funny how things turn out. I'm mid-conversation with a designer when I spot her, Melissa Green, the woman Barbara had handpicked for Ethan. The right kind of girl. She hesitates at the entrance, clutching her purse like it's some kind of shield. Our eyes meet, and for a second, she looks like she might turn around and leave. But then she squares her shoulders and walks toward me. "Claire." Her voice is softer than I remember, less polished, more real. I raise an eyebrow. "Melissa?" She exhales, shifting awkwardly. I wasn't sure if I should come. And yet, here you are." A small, self-deprecating smile flickers across her lips. "Yeah." She glances around, taking in the boutique, the success, the undeniable proof of everything I've accomplished. Then, after a moment, she says, "I believed Barbara." I don't respond. I just let her talk. "I thought she was looking out for me," she continues. "She told me Ethan was the perfect man, that you didn't deserve him, that I was the better choice." She shakes her head, almost laughing at herself, and I believed her, until I saw what she did to him. Her eyes meet mine, and for the first time, there's no judgment, just understanding. "That could have been me," she says quietly. For a long moment, I say nothing. Then, finally, I smile and gesture around the boutique. "Welcome to the little shop Barbara tried to destroy." Melissa looks around again, and this time, she smiles too. Later that night, after the last guest leaves, I step onto the balcony. The city skyline stretches before me, glittering against the dark sky. The same view I stared at the night I walked away from Ethan. But this time, I don't feel loss. I feel light. I never needed their approval. I never needed Ethan. I was never not good enough. I was always better.